Hi, guys. Thank you for listening. If you're new here, my name is EAHamm, and I usually post actual videos, but for the time being, I am just doing my voice because what I am about to discuss is just so much easier in this format, and you can actually just listen to my voice and my story and be able to follow along. Like I said last week, 2020 has been a kind of a weird year, and I'm sure that you all who are listening can attest to that. But this year has also brought a lot to light, and it has brought healing as well as restoration. And I wanted to start off with a little bit of my backstory. I did discuss that I struggled in my life with anxiety and depression. Anxiety was something that I struggled with, I think, a lot longer than the depression. I have memories as a small girl. At night, I would be in my bed, and you know how all small children are, but I would see shadows and I would call for my mom, and I don't know, like the littlest thing would affect me. I just remember being so terrified that it was easier for me to scream for my mom. And being a mom now, I understand her frustration because this would go on for an hour or two after she had put me in bed. And even though she had given me a nightlight, kept my door propped open, sang to me, held my hand, prayed with me, read me a story, I still would scream for her. And I'm not sure the exact age. I just have memories of that. And the next memory with the anxiety was when I was in kindergarten, and halfway through the year, my parents decided to switch schools. For some reason, they decided that the school I was attending wasn't up to standard of what they wanted, and so they switched me in the middle of the year. And even though I would be attending with several friends of mine, I still would wake up every day and be sick to my stomach. I still would dry heave. I still would shake. I would be scared. And then when I got to school, it would all disappear. So as an adult looking back, I know that the anxiety was there at a young age, and that was some of my first memories. To give you a little background of where I came from, I grew up in a Christian home. We attended an independent fundamental Baptist church my entire life. If you're not familiar with what that is, it is a church. They call themselves IFB. And they claim to be independent of organizations. They're not a part of a bigger, broad spectrum. They answer only to God and the Bible, and they're supposed to be independent. But as I began to get older, I noticed that they weren't so much independent, but all the IFB churches were codependent, as you might say, on each other. And there was a lot of competition. There was a lot of judgment. There was a lot of anger. When I was younger, I just don't remember the anger coming from the pulpit. I had a different pastor, but when he left when I was 10 years old, we had a new pastor move to the area from Florida, and I am up north. And I remember as a 10-year-old, they were young. I think they were in their later 20s, early 30s. Me and my friends, we just loved the pastor's wife. They both were magnetic. They both were very likable. And they had that charismatic personality about them that would draw you in. And being as naive as I was a very loving girl. I still am. But I was very independent. I spoke what I thought. I know that I was stubborn. I would tell you what I thought without thinking of the consequences. And as a 10-year-old girl, me and my friends just loved this pastor's wife. She took us under her wing. I don't remember if she was our Sunday school teacher, but I do remember we loved her. She would tell us stories. We would all gather around her. She would make us laugh. We just loved her half to death. And me being as loving and caring as I am, me and my friends would write her little notes and tell her how much we love her, and we would beg to go over her house. Looking back as an adult now, I think that's just normal. You find somebody that you look up to. We were writing her notes, drawing her pictures. That was the texting back then. That's what I tell my kids today. The texting back then was the writing of notes, and we would draw pictures and just give them to her. I remember she taught us how to cross stitch, as a group, and we just loved her half to death. And I remember one day, I think it was a Wednesday night, because we went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday. My mom was in this singing group, and so was my friends' moms, and they were up practicing in the auditorium, and we were there. I don't know what we were doing, but this pastor, which was her husband, called us to his office and sat us down. Mind you, we were 10 years old. I want to say he was in his early 30s. But anyways, we sat there, and he proceeded to tell us he noticed that we wrote his wife a lot of notes saying that we loved her and that we looked up to her and all this stuff. And he said, that's all good and well, but she's an adult and you're children. Okay. And then he proceeded to tell us that we needed to write notes to people our own age. I just remember the feeling I got in my gut as my stomach turned that I had made this person upset. He wasn't smiling. I saw the look on his face. Pretty much told us that we were children and his wife was an adult and she was there to minister to the adults and that we needed to stick to people our own age. She wasn't our friend. We weren't going to hang out, etc., etc. That was the turning point for me. Later on, I would discuss this with my friends, and they weren't as hurt as I was. We all had different personalities, but for me, that was the turning point. That was the beginning of the end, so to speak, for me, because I was told that loving someone that I admired or telling them that I admired them was wrong. And I never told my parents that, but from that day forward, that was just the beginning of being told how wrong I was. We were brought up in this IFB church to please God, but ultimately I began to fear God. The opposite of love is fear or indifference, but I began to fear God and fear people. I was a people pleaser. I found that I became a people pleaser. Now, mind you, as a small child, I didn't care what you had to say. I remember adults telling me, why would you do that? Just little things. Like I remember pretend smoking with this long pretzel stick, and someone went and told my parents, but they told me they were going to tell my parents. And I remember looking at them and saying, go ahead, tell my parents. It's not a real cigarette, and think what you want. I remember telling these adults I didn't care. But as I grew older and that turning point, I began to just shut my mouth because I found that If I did bring something up, if I did say something wrong, I would be told about it, and I was to not speak my mind because the pastor was always right, the adults in my life were always right, and ultimately my voice was silenced. My personality along with that was squelched. I didn't want to be labeled the rebel if I didn't obey. I just couldn't be that child who stood up to these adults. And I think that might have started the process or the part in me that began to die off. The real Elizabeth essentially sat down and shut down, and this other person was taking over an autopilot just to make everyone happy. So depression set in. I remember just the helplessness that would take over me. It would just be better if I wasn't around. I made adults so upset all the time, and I just couldn't do anything right, and the helplessness and hopelessness began to settle in. And I just lived like this, the ups and downs. Imagine the trauma that has on a young person. It would be traumatic for an adult to go through all of that. The brainwashing, the being told that you're not right, sit down and be quiet, you're not right. God is furious with you, and if you do this, and if you decide not to follow these steps, you can get in your car and a semi could hit you head on and you can die. Is that what you want? Do you want to die because you didn't follow this standard or you didn't follow this belief? And ultimately, I lived my life in so much turmoil and so much fear that it just was a lot of roller coaster emotions. And so that went on into my adult life. And I need to split up this story for you, but that was just the beginning. There was a lot of codependency, a lot of people pleasing. If you can just tell me what I need to do right, I'll do it, and then you'll be happy with me, then you'll smile, then I'll be in good graces, then you will possibly be my friend or possibly talk to me. And I was always trying to scan the room, scan the adult's face, listen to the tone, read between the lines. And let me tell you, that is no way to live. And that is where everything started for me with the depression and anxiety. And that went on very well into my adult life, where I formed toxic friendships. I was drawn to toxic individuals. A lot of them were narcissists, which I have learned. They fed on people like me, people who would submit, people who would do anything to please them, and that was their way of feeding. And they took great joy in seeing someone like me cry because, I pretty much worshiped the ground they walked on and would do anything for them. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I will continue this series. I'm not sure if I'm updating every week or every other week. I'm not sure at this time. Please give me grace in that. I know that I do talk a lot about writing on this channel, but I know that I also wanted to share about depression and anxiety. If there are any other people out there who grew up in the independent fundamental world, then you kind of know. Or even if you didn't and you have a different story, why don't you share that in the comments? I'd like to connect with you. Seriously, there is strength in numbers. And I want to close with, NaNoWriMo is in just a few short days. I'm so excited about it. Like I said in my last video, I don't know what I am writing this year, but I am participating, and that starts this Sunday, November the 1st. So I just wanted to say to be blessed, be at peace, love yourselves, don't live in fear, be kind to yourself this week. Don't live in fear of this upcoming election. Try to just focus on your family and being there with your family and friends and loving yourself. And to my fellow writers, like I say each and every week, just keep on writing.